the speakers to come up here and sit here.
Are we doing like Oprah? Are we doing because I'll be Oprah. But it is a Q&A, which means y'all are supposed to ask me and them questions, right? Oh, you have them?
Yes.
Oh, you guys have already written them out?
We got it. They are questions, and in fact,
all right,
if you still haven't written questions on cards, you can still pass them on. Now put them up here for me. But I have to say, I have a lot of questions here. Thanks. Okay. I want to thank all of our speakers for a very I must say, for me, it's very enjoyable to hear people from different political positions.
I think you're in a different political position here, and you're on the same side. You're not really in a different political position.
We've got to get way beyond this left-right divide. It is so much more about Washington, D.C. versus to wage wars, foreigners, and wages wars on us.
Right. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions about the same topic, and so I'm going to sort of combine them. It has to do with what do we do? I'll just read some of the questions quickly. What would you say to Nancy Pelosi to encourage her to sign on to the Barbara Lee's bill? Or, since Nancy Pelosi directs Congress and its congressional policy, why doesn't the progressive movement create a permanent focus group that engages Pelosi? Or, how can Americans build a movement to pressure the U.S. government to withdraw from Iraq and Afghanistan? Can any of the panelists, what do you think the most effective means of change is?
A lot about Nancy Pelosi in there. You're running against her, aren't you? I would say one of the things you can do about Nancy Pelosi is stop whining about her and get her out of office. We still have that power, right? I don't think John Pelosi will sit down with Nancy Pelosi. If she doesn't get the point that we need to come home, that she should not vote on war funding, Democrats should stop voting on war funding and the wars. I don't know much about the candidacy. I know that my friend Cindy Sheehan has tried to challenge him. It's almost like we look at people like him and say, well, he's not going to win. Well, if we all hate her, why is he going to win? So what can we do about Nancy outside of electing you? Is that it? Is that all we do?
Well, one thing we can do is be voters and not enablers. Not only enabling Nancy Pelosi, but also enabling stereotypes. I find it ironic that I, as a Republican running in a place like San Francisco, which is constantly battling stereotypes, which is challenging the rest of the country to battle stereotypes, isn't hearing my message. Today, the Bay Guardian endorsed Nancy Pelosi without ever asking me for an interview. Anybody here read the Guardian? Anybody want to write a letter and ask them why they didn't ask me to come in? No, anyway. My positions, I think, are a much better fit for San Francisco. It's about partisan hackery, I think, at the end of the day. And if we participate, we're part of the problem.
I cut my teeth politically during the Vietnam War. I came to political maturity then. And I think there were some lessons we learned. Mario Savio said it best, I think. There are times when you have to put your body on the wheel and stop the gears. I think there is a time when we've got to start getting volunteers who are prepared to get arrested in Nancy Pelosi's office, to grab some headlines, to continue to upset the machine until such time as it's possible to elect somebody like Mr. Dennis. I think we have become too self-satisfied, too comfortable, and we have got to learn to live with some discomfort. And if that means getting periodically arrested, then that's what it's going to take. I also think that we have to put targets on the backs of the people where it belongs. It's not enough to simply hold out Pelosi and say that's the problem. There are lots of people in this city who make the decisions every day that make it possible for the war machine to continue. In the Silicon Valley alone, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are in high positions, executive offices, who make it possible for the war machine to do what it does. We've got to go after those people, we've got to name the names, and make their lives miserable.
We have a lot of questions here.
Yeah, one thing here is that, an irony that hasn't been brought up, is that the Woodward book makes very clear that when one aspect of Obama's reluctance to give Petraeus and McChrystal the 40,000 troops, he brought it down to 30,000, but that is, again, that's kind of a linguistic thing. It's going to be 40,000 at least that he sent over. But he wouldn't give him the 80,000, well, they don't have 80,000, but he wouldn't give him, say, 60,000, because he said of Democratic opposition in his own party. And actually, Nancy Pelosi has rather openly said at a number of points, has brought out, my Democrats in this House here are very reluctant to spend more money. We're doing it reluctantly when the President asked for it, but she has not been a walk pushing on Afghanistan. And as a matter of fact, the reason that Obama gave at one point for this rather strange policy, very strange policy, of giving him basically the 40,000 troops, but saying I will reduce them just about the time the last of them have arrived, in 2011, very strange policy. Well, he said to various people, he's quoted in the book, as saying, I have to say that for my Democratic base. I will lose my own Democratic base if I do otherwise. So that means we do have something to work with. Even on this issue, possibly Pelosi. Now, how strong a read is that? Well, the fact is that on Iraq, on Afghanistan, over the years, the Democrats, there have been a lot of people like David Obey and Appropriations and others who said, I don't want to spend another dollar on this. I don't want to do it, but when the time comes to support the troops and so forth, and support the military-industrial complex, they do hold the appropriations. And Pelosi has indeed held them in mind on that issue. There does seem to be more opposition among the Democrats on Afghanistan than there was on Iraq. And that reflects a public attitude here of a majority. There was a majority last September, before the president made his decision, a majority against sending any more troops. And there was a very high majority in the Democrats. That's true right now. So the fact is, we are going to have Pelosi, sorry, as I think you almost, before you intend to vanquish her. Let me go really out on a limb here, though, and say that I think we're going to have Pelosi after November, and should we then give up on the idea of having any influence on her? I would think not, actually. And on this one, saying it is not enough to say, I really hate to do this, I'm having trouble getting people in line. It is not her job to get people in line for a policy that the president himself has openly said, that's for more troops in Afghanistan, has openly said he doesn't want. She shouldn't have to get the troops in the House in line for that. On the contrary, she ought to hear from us in all the ways he mentioned, including every other way that was ever used to bring influence, money talks more than anything else, no question. But where we don't have money, bodies online, in various ways, to make it clear that on this occasion, we want them to act on their voting the way they talk, which is that we want out of Afghanistan, not in.
Suppose we ask everyone in this room to either call or visit Ms. Pelosi's office in the next week. You can do that. I've done it many times. Call or visit. Whatever. Raise your hand if you're willing to do this. So the next question is then has to do with judicial leverage. Let's see, I kind of mislaid it, but it had to do with what is there any kind of judicial leverage that can be used to stop over? What judicial leverage? I laid the question down and now I lost it. Okay.
That can be answered.
Okay, yes.
The courts have been totally derelict in this for half a century now. The Supreme Court and the other courts have always backed off from issues of conscription, issues of the draft in general, but issues of standing in terms of challenging aggression, challenging continuation of order. They say it's a political question, it's for the Congress to decide. Actually, that's a very questionable position for them to be on. In many of these cases, there are clear issues of law. They're moving in a bad direction in general on all these issues of secrecy and everything else, with exceptions. There have been federal judges who have made some very good rulings in the last couple of years, but they tend to be overruled on appeal. I would have to say, various people, percentage and others, as in Vietnam, have really brought suits in various, tried to bring suits on some of these issues, but they don't get anywhere. It may be educational, but not very much, because they really don't get very far.
Okay. For those of you who read the Woodward book, there's a question about whether it's possible that Woodward's narrative is an oblique message from the intelligence service concerning the conduct of the war, or is it having to do with something deeper?
Well, and I talked to them too. I have to say that after reading the book, I just came away thinking, much like you said, it seems obvious in the book that nobody except the military wants to be in this. I mean, all the advisors said no. Barack Obama himself has said no. And so it almost leaves you scratching your head at the end saying, well, if everybody said no, then really why are we here? And you really do have to ask yourself, and I think you really summarized that beautifully as to why we're there, because, and I do believe that Woodward left out some things, and I really have to read the book. You are right about betrayal. I keep calling them betrayals. I'm sorry, I know it's a moveon.org, but that's what I call them. I think you're right, to keep them out of the political fray. Now, I think Woodward is well-intentioned with his book. I think he's trying to help us understand how this president, who at one time seemed so anti-war, is now the president of escalation. And he's trying to shed some light on the forces around him that perhaps led him to this place. My problem with the book is when I elect a president, I want him to be able to control the forces around him and not be washed away by them. So there's an issue there. And that's what I was left with in the book. It's like, well, now I understand it, but I still don't like it.
Yeah. Anybody else?